So we've got your questions, we've collected them, and just right away, one thing, there was one question that we got more than any other, and it wasn't even close. And it was, Father Joe, how did you get to be so pretty? And I'll be honest, I wrote that one. And I kind of wrote it a lot. So when you take that out of the equation and you get into that thing, I think it's called reality, there was one question that dominated all others. And for our panelists, what I'm thinking is, I think, Matt, you got the microphone down there, brother. So, yeah, we're going to, oh, you're passing?
Okay. Phone a friend.
Okay. Well, it's what is the best defense to run against, oh, no, I'm sorry. Dude, that was you. You wrote that? That's crazy. No. So what I'd love is if we could, panelists, I'd love each of us to take a stab at this with, frankly, a concise, kind of one-point answer, if you can. And the question is a general category of how do I get my adult children who are disconnected from the faith or disinterested in the faith? What's my best way to reach them and to witness to them? And Matt, if you're comfortable, we're going to ask you to launch that missile.
Sure, I'm certainly qualified because I don't have any adult children. But it's something I do think about, and the short, concise answer for me and my wife is we try to be a joyful witness to the faith and how we live it, and make it appealing to them. So, and I cradle Catholic, fell away, came back, and I do think that at some point we all need to reclaim or claim the faith as our own. That's important. That everybody's going to go through that period, and so I think, but joyful witness. That's my answer. Final answer.
I'd like to comment that this seating position stinks. First of all, he makes me look like a midget, a jockey, and then he's going to make me look like a pagan. What is this? I'm going to logically prove to you that your days of beating yourself up over for your children leaving the faith are over. Please just answer yes or no. Please just answer yes or no. Is there a God?
Yes.
Is Christ God?
Yes.
Was he sinless?
Yes.
Could he perform miracles?
Yes.
Did he have a perfect understanding of human nature?
Yes.
Could he get most people to follow him?
No.
Oh, so you all think you're better at this than the God-man. Can you do a miracle? Can you do even a crummy card trick? I have 10 children. Some of them probably going to serve the church. Some of them probably going to serve time. I'm not their savior. I read that. You had that, and I stole it because I knew I was in front of you.
So I'd echo what Matt said about being a joyful witness. I think that's the most important thing that you can do once your kids are gone. But I'd echo what Ray says too, in the sense of my favorite way of thinking of God is God as a rescuer. And that's what he does. He doesn't just create, he rescues his creation. And the enemy is continually trying to get us to despair, or at least to be discouraged. And for you as parents, it's usually about your kids more than anything, and especially if those of you who have kids who are older, who've left the home. So I always encourage people, one of the easiest ways to step on the enemy's head is just to thank God in advance that he's going to win your children, even though you can't see it yet.
Amen. I would say remember the miracle stories. Remember how big God is. Don't put God in the box. And you think about people who've fallen away from the faith. We both fell away for many years. And now look at us. So be careful what you pray for. So just keep praying, remember the miracles, and also St. Monica is a great intercessor.
Yeah.
And look what she did with her son, Augustine. So just keep praying, remember the miracles, and put them in God's hands. As Ray said, you are not the Savior. Jesus Christ is the Savior. Love them, pray for them, welcome them into your home, practice your faith, leave the rest up to God.
Nice.
I would say to think about the Jesus when he meets the two apostles on the road to Emmaus. He just starts out by saying, "Hey, what's going on? What are you thinking? What are you talking about?" So in other words, meet them where they're at, and just walk with them slowly, and eventually, maybe if it's God wills, it'll be you can bring them back. It may be others. It may never be, but use that example of walking as Jesus walked with the two disciples, to meet them where they're at and slowly look for the opportunities to speak with them.
The only thing that came to my mind is just be real. Be real. Don't be religious. Be real.
Nice.
I think that, along with what Sally said, very good advice all along here. Don't be acting out of a profound sense of guilt. Your child is an independent moral agent. And one thing you might do that I've heard worked in a few cases is once that child is convinced that you're not clawing after them to get right with God, invite them to come on some parish work project. Something going into one of the worst neighborhoods in the area, to help clean up. And no doctrinal questions, no doing apologetics, because your kids are probably decent people, and they probably like to think of themselves as decent people. Well, let them do something as decent people, and let them do it with the church. I know a fellow who, in fact, the way he came to the Catholic Church is somebody just once asked if he'd like to come and help rehab a home that the parish was doing. And he went. Within a few years, he was a permanent deacon in the Catholic Church.
Isn't that something? That's something. Al, Sally, while we got you guys, we had a question. How can we help our kids navigate through suffering when it comes their way? How can we prepare them that at some point it will come? And how do we help them through times of suffering?
Well, this is actually we haven't had any real problem like this with the kids yet, right? All right? Like what?
Is there a marriage counselor in the...
We have had children struggle with depression. We have had children struggle with their faith. And all I can say is they call him. No, he has accompanied our children through very difficult times. And so have I. I'm their mom. So it's so difficult when your children are suffering. I think that's the most difficult thing of parenthood. But I would like to just not know about it, but that's not the right position to take. So just be steady and be real. Let them talk and tell you everything in a reality that is their reality. And you suffer along with them.
Yeah, the thing I would stress, I'm thinking of one of our boys in this regard, when he first began having to deal with depression, I spent a lot of time talking with him. Now it's years later, and I've noticed that he has accepted this as his own and knows that he is the one that's going to have to work through this. Yeah. And so we talk, but Actually, that's been about. Actually afraid that we're going to have something really wild and crazy happen to one of the kids. Always in the back of your mind, right? You're thinking, I'm here to protect my kids. I'm here to protect my kids. But you really know that ultimately you can't protect them.
Yeah.
You have to turn them over to God.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Holy Deacon, Teresa, do you have any thoughts for parents on how to either prepare their own kids for marriage or an outside couple, like assigned by the parish, if that couple's living together? Do you have any advice on that? Oh, no, you want to send that down to Dr. Wright? I saw that face. Yeah.
So either one of those can answer that.
If they're living together, that's
Yeah, a couple in marriage prep who's living together, do you have any tips for parents for talking to them, or if it's not their kids, how to prepare them?
well, one of the first things I would say, if they can, to separate as soon as they can before the marriage, so they can experience some time, some of that time apart, and in some way kind of simulate then coming together for the first time after they're married. If they can't, boy, I haven't really had too much opportunity to counsel folks like that, but to live as chastely as they can during that time.
So this is a pretty normal part of our life, as you know, and Father Adam knows. I think one of the things for me, anyway, that's important is young people don't understand what the church teaches on sexuality. How could they, quite frankly, living in the culture that we live in? And so to come at it from a perspective of, I get that you think this seems to make a lot of sense because you see the divorce rate, you see unhappy couples, and so you often try to, it looks like the right thing to do to live together to see whether or not you're going to be compatible. But at the same time, I mean, let's be honest, you guys aren't living together so that you can meet the phone bill payment. I mean, you're living together so that you can be sexually active, usually, among other things. So, I mean, personally, I just share my own life story with people, oftentimes. So I dated a woman for 7 years, and we didn't live like an altar boy and a choir girl. And so I said, I get the challenge of like wanting to show affection, but here's the key. When you're sexually active with someone, your body is saying something to the other person. And what you're saying, because so I raise hand, that means, hey, welcome. I give welcome. I give Matt a high five, that means, hey, we won, I give you a hug, it means affection. Sexual intercourse or sexual activity means it's saying something to the other person. What it's saying is, everything I have is yours. And that's either true or it's not. And as much as you might want it to be true because you guys aren't married yet, that's a lie. And you know it. And I'm amazed how many people respond to that. They've just never heard, oftentimes, why the church teaches what she does. I mean, God hates sin for one reason, that the one reason is because it's harmful to me. But people don't understand how these things could be harmful to them. So I think we just have to be patient, back up, and go, okay, let me try to share that with you. And I'm impressed with how many people, when we do that, make a commitment to live chastely.
Yeah, me too. I've been blown away by that. In my last assignment, I had a...
Are you on the panel?
I am the panel. Yeah. So, I got a call from the bishop's office, and he said, you have twice the weddings that church has had, and it was 1 year. And it was a new priest at a nearby parish. And it was because 13 couples in 1 year. I was the third priest they met with, and the first one who didn't yell at them and or humiliate them, and walk them through, not as well as you did, but walk them through the why gently. We can't get mad if people, I can't get over what you said the first day. We're really in a post-Christian model of evangelization, and we keep forgetting that. And we assume so much knowledge. And I agree 100%. And also, I do think the tenderness of the approach is so important. I would not yell at you for not knowing something that you don't know. But, Doc?
This means more to the ladies than the men. If you ask, do you want a commitment for life? The women more often do. And then you can tell them, did you know the divorce rate is much, much higher for folks who have lived together before marriage?
And that's something. Yeah. Okay.
I went really short on that one, so I just figured I wanted to get another one.
You do. It's right here. Doc, this is specifically directed to you, this question. Marriage is full of joy.
This is my wife's question.
Yeah. And my husband is a horrible human being.
All I know is she'll never be satisfied with the Golden Corral again.
The pain and suffering that spouses cause each other in life, right? How do you get to the point of having it be joyful, right? How do you get to the point of transforming, I think is this point, the pain and the suffering into joy?
What the heck? What kind of quantum leap is that?
Yeah, there's the person to a
how do
stick
you
man.
go from being miserable to saintly? First of all, I want to confirm something Sally said. I think this is wonderful, Sally, and I'm going to plagiarize this. Don't be religious, be religious. I really like that. That's really good. Religious. That's cute.
She gets a quarter every time you say that now. Yeah.
It's a transition.
Yeah.
You're not going to leap into joy after you've been miserable. What you're going to do is you're going to share it. And I like to talk to the guys were talking about this. You go beside the person. How can I help you? How can I be with you? Tell me what's going on. As I said yesterday or a couple days ago, they all run together when you're eating like this. You know what I noticed too? Would this be a problem morally? I notice we Catholics, we all say blessing in the windjammer right before gluttony. There's some kind of incongruity to that. You know. Okay. Get inside the person's head. Understand why they're feeling this suffering. Don't just assume that because the event happened, they're going to be miserable. A lot of people have miserable events and are not miserable. So you got to get inside their head and just seek and ask. Try to understand, because even doing that makes somebody feel like you're with them.
I think Dominic and I have a lot of experience in this area because of what we went through. You heard our testimony, and a lot of couples come to us and say, well, gosh, how long did it take for you to get over whatever you were going through and be happy again? Like 6 months? A year? And we say, no, like 6 or 7 years, up and down, counseling, marriage encounter. I think the biggest thing for us is that we have an attitude of gratitude. Father made a great point in his talk on Monday about how important gratitude is. There isn't a day that goes by that we don't thank God for the miracle he's done in our lives. And we laugh at each other. Of course, with me, there's so much to laugh at, and he's got so much material to work with. But beyond that, we really laugh about things now, about our differences. I mean, we are so opposite, and it's just really funny. And I think the longer you're married, you realize that, you're not going to be happy every single day. Get over it. Yeah. Life happens. But the difference in the Catholic Church is that we have this beautiful theology on suffering. And you offer it up, you get through it, then there is real joy. There's joy for the journey, as Sister Ann Shields would say.
Yeah. Can we send that one down to Matt? Got one for you. Now, I assume this came from my parishioners. There were a couple questions about, frankly, going to church, taking your family to church when either the priest is, a mean priest, boring priest. There were a couple who talked about priests who are bachelors rather than servants of God. and how hard it is to get the kids on board. Do you have any advice for parents who've got squeakers or teenagers where you're taking them to Mass and you know that, frankly, by perception, it will not be a good experience? Does this make sense, brother?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, taking kids to Mass, it's a full contact sport with with my family. I've attended. If you're in the bathroom or down in the basement, I hope that counts as attending Mass on Sundays, because I've spent a lot of them there. I mean, obviously the Mass is the most important part of our faith, and the Eucharist is the source and the summit. I guess what I try to do is, hopefully that's not my children's only interaction with the faith, right? Like, hopefully we better not just be going to Mass on Sundays for 1 hour and that's it. We're trying to find ways to live our faith every single day, so it's not just Mass. And I'm not. Somebody said about tenderness, have tenderness dealing with kids. I'm not that tender. I should be, but when my kids complain when they get to the age about going to Mass, I'm just kind of like I don't care. I don't care. I really don't. You go tell your mom. That's. And then they get to when they get a little bit, well, we're not going for you. It's not for you. We're not going so you can get something out of it. That's not what it's for. Ultimately, we're going to worship and glorify God. And I don't know, hopefully that straight talk works, but you just, kind of like what I talked about yesterday, you just keep showing up. You just keep showing up, and good things are going to happen.
Nice. This is one I'd like to send kind of up and down the line. And if you don't mind, brother, we're going to put the starting on you, right? You're going to give the ball to.
Well, you always want to work, up and to the right. So we'll start
through the tunnel. Let's
crescendo at the end.
So the current state of our church leadership, however you perceive that, right? For some people, it's a worry about Pope Francis. For, I think, most people, there's a worry about our bishops. This sense of the, frankly, embarrassment of being Catholic, dealing with that right now. Do you have any, it's a very general question because it was asked in a lot of different ways. Can you give again, one of those, short, punchy answers about what do I do with the feeling of embarrassment either inflicted on me or felt within me in regard to the leadership in the church?
I guess I don't really feel that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going anywhere. My two.
Yeah, you're 6'7". Who's going to challenge you?
Huh? That too. I guess, I mean, two things. One, the current state, I think it's on us. I think it's on the lay people. There aren't enough. We don't have enough. And there's, most priests are good, great, right? We're not talking about the majority. We're talking about a small number who have embarrassed the church. But there's not enough good ones, out there. I mean, it's on us. We have to do our part too, the lay people. And the second thing, I like to go for the kill right away. If someone wants to talk about it, I say, well, are you maybe you don't like President Trump. So are you embarrassed about the United States of America? Well, no, I just don't like President Trump. Well, so, I mean, that's kind of the point, right? We're talking about people here in the grand scheme of a larger institution who still believe in the church.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bishop Sheen tells a story about a bishop who wanted to baptize a Jewish man. And the Jewish man said, I have business in the Vatican. And the bishop said, I need to baptize you before you go. No. I'm going to go to the Vatican first. Goes to the Vatican for 2 months. Bishop thinks, I've lost him. He's seeing what it's like there. He's seeing those guys. He's seeing how they do it. It's over. The Jewish businessman comes back and says, I'm ready to be baptized now. The bishop says, You went to the Vatican? Yes. You saw how they did things? You saw who they were? Yes. You still want to be baptized? Yes. Why? Your Excellency, I'm a businessman. If I ran a business the way that church operates, we'd have been out of business within 2 months. That church has lasted 2,000 years. It's got to be of God.
There you go.
There are so many things we could say about this right now. I might just say this. So our ministry now takes us around the country working with priests. So we've had a chance to be in front of about 500 priests in the last 6 months. And I'll tell you that the morale amongst most of our brothers is beyond low. And I guess I'll just ask you, one of the things that, what people feel oftentimes in the situation that we're in is they feel helpless. So I'll give you something to do if I can, which is to make a commitment to pray every day for whoever your pastor is and for the associates. To adopt them spiritually, especially for women, to adopt them as spiritual mothers. And to find a way to encourage them and befriend them. We've had 2 priests commit suicide in the last couple months that made pretty national attention, good men. We've had 2 bishops who are really good bishops go on leave, not because of scandals, but because they're depressed or exhausted. And that's going to happen more and more. So I just plead with you really to pray for the guys who are serving as trauma doctors, that God will keep them strong and that you can be a means to befriend them and to walk with them and to encourage them.
A couple of months ago, I think it was around mid-November, I heard an interview with a particular conservative talk show host whose name I'm not going to mention. I like him. I think he does a good job. And he's always pounding on the corruption in the government. And he's been very good at exposing a lot of the corruption that happened with the Mueller report and FISA and all these things. He's been doing a really good job with investigative reporters and whatnot. And he also says in that interview that he left the Catholic Church because of the corruption. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. You just sat there and talked about how corrupt our government is. You hit that every day. And as Matt was talking, you're not leaving the United States of America. You're still paying taxes. You're still following the laws that the government has set for us. So how can you leave one institution that's much older than the United States of America and founded by God because of corruption, and then sit there and say how proud you are to be an American, and yet there's rampant corruption? And number 2, I think we can't take all the negativity that the media is giving it us. Not saying that we should ignore the problem. But look, I worked in the media for 20 years, and they always cling to the negative about any institution, but especially the church. So don't allow yourself to absorb all that negativity and believe what they're telling you, because you're going to start reflecting it and believing it yourself. Live your faith joyfully, be willing to answer questions, and don't be embarrassed by God. God founded the church.
Nice.
On St. Peter. Again, we're not minimizing the problems, but we can't say on the one hand where we just can't stand the corruption in this institution, that institution. There's so many entities that have the same issues going on. And yet nobody would think of leaving the United States or throwing out their medical license or throwing out their teaching certificate because of corruption within the system. Be positive, pray, and support and pray for our priests and bishops. Amen?
I'll go back to when we first came back to the church. The thing that just ignited my faith was learning about my faith, learning more and more about my faith, studying the faith as well as Scripture. But when I started to read about the history of the church, about the saints, about reading various church letters and things from 2,000 years, or the early church up until the most recent. And that made me so proud to be Catholic. I I was just overwhelmed by all the beauty and the depth of the faith. And that is what has kept me strong through all this. So my advice would be to learn more about your faith and enjoy the richness and depth of the faith. And I think that would overcome a lot of our being embarrassed about the faith.
Thank you.
On the way down here, Albert Fata told me the story, the short story of Nathaniel Hawthorne. It's called The Birthmark. I don't know if any of you read it in class or something. Most of us don't read short stories by Nathaniel Hawthorne. But Albert brought it up. It's the story of this great scientist. He's got wonderful achievements to his name. He's respected by all. He marries the most beautiful woman in the area. So you bring these two, top-tier people together. The only problem is that the beautiful woman has a small birthmark on her cheek. And as the story unfolds, it's the scientist becoming increasingly convinced that if she would just submit to his scientific experiments, he would be able to rid her of the birthmark. She experiences tremendous consternation about this. She now realizes that he's no longer seeing her, he's seeing the birthmark. And as the story unfolds, they both end up in destruction because he continues to try to dig deeper and deeper into her face, and the birthmark doesn't go away. So he's preoccupied, obsessed to their own destruction. I would argue that people who are focusing in on these problems, and they are real problems, don't know, really, they actually don't know how far these problems go. I read a book recently in which this fellow tried to throw Benedict XVI and Pope John Paul II and John the 23rd and Paul the 6th and the late Pius the 12th, all in the same boat as having been complicit or corrupt in the destruction of the church. Now, once you start thinking that way, you're really focusing on that little birthmark, and it's starting to consume you. Pius the 12th, I said they both went through their destruction. Yeah. Pius the 12th is venerable. John the 23rd is a saint. Paul the 6th is a saint. John Paul I is venerable. John Paul II is a saint. Benedict XVI worked with St. John Paul II through the lion's share of his career and service. And now we have Pope Francis. For the last 75 years or so, the church has been being governed at the highest level by either venerable or saints, with a few years' exception. And if you look over the grand scheme of church history, what we're going through today is a bump in the road. And if you want to focus on the bump, like the scientist focused on the birthmark, you will eventually find yourself rejecting the church. You'll take the beauty of the church. You'll miss the world's debt to the Catholic Church. You'll miss the grand achievements. The church has been the greatest protector of human dignity on the face of the earth. The church has been the protector and patron of some of the greatest works of art. The church has given us the most remarkable synthesis of faith and reason ever. You can go down the list of achievements of the church. And to let a tiny percentage of perverse Catholic priests define what the church is about, that's as obsessive and sick an approach as that scientist's approach to his wife in the birthmark.
Thank you. And if I may, two things that I've been able to share with people as a priest in the midst of all this is, and it's going to sound like I'm being funny at first, and I'm not. Most of you are sane. And so you assume a certain level of sanity in the world about you. But that's not the case. And the church draws to itself those of us who are broken. Those of us who know we need a spiritual doctor are the ones who come. And one of the things that when Father John was talking that I thought it might surprise you what we hear from Catholics as priests. My first email at my new assignment, my first email was, what can you do to make sure, what can we do as parents to make sure you are never alone with our child in the confessional? It was my first email. And we had to go into the church. Some of the school parents were concerned. They didn't know me, and they love their kids. But we had to go into the church and move the confessional station outside of the box so that they would let their kids go to confession with the new priest. And on one level, that hurt, obviously. And on another level, they love their kids. And it's a tough road. I usually wear clerics. I always wore just the black pants and the black shirt. And when all this happened, I started wearing my cassock because I refused to be ashamed. I'm ashamed of my brother. I'm ashamed of my brothers. I'm ashamed of my own sin, rightly so. But I'm not ashamed to be a priest. And the reason God calls guys like us is not because we have it together. It's exactly the opposite. And that's why it's such a joy for us. The second thing, for a while, I got into, someone sent me a news media, this is many years ago, check out this media source, which I read and was shocked, and then it led me to another Catholic media source. And in the end, after about 3 months, I realized I was moving into a state of perpetual indignation. And I was actually giving someone money to help me feel completely indignant all the time. And the fruits of the Spirit are not perpetual indignation. The fruits of the Spirit are not terror and rage. And so I purged my life of those people who want to constantly scream at me and make money off me based on what I can't control. Right. God gave me one thing to control, and it isn't the Pope, it isn't the bishops, it's not the diocese, right, brother? Our job's to be saints. That's it. And I can barely be holy. What makes me think it's my mission to impose that on anyone else? So when we are tempted, that I really believe this, to despair about the church, and I'm tempted all the time to despair about it, I have to remember God gave me one thing to control, and I can barely do that. My job is to be a saint, and that's all of our jobs, and nothing can stop that but me. So that's how I've been fighting through this. And, you know, I hate doing this, but do pray for us. And I hate that. I hate making it about us. But pray for us. It is terrifying at times. Truth is the first casualty in this kind of war. So anyway, I'll shut up now. And I'll ask, So how's it going? That's the next question. Teresa and Holy Deacon, how do I stop keeping score in my marriage? Not me. My wife and I are fine. We don't talk.
Just stop.
Thank you.
Just stop.
Oh, I thought you meant me.
No.
I really did.
Well, that too.
And I would get that. Yeah. Okay.
It sounds like it's so complicated and hard, but it's not. As we were saying in our talk Tuesday, we've heard so many amazing speakers. Father John's brilliant talk, which is theological, pure. I mean, really, really interesting and just absorbs you in terms of really getting what the church is all about. But what he said, what Dr. A said, what Dominic and I said, what Alan and Sally have said, all of us here, Matt, it's really very simple. Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. The closer you get to God, the more you see your own issues, and it's very humbling. So the only thing we can do, and Ray said this, and we've said it, is to concentrate and pray for your spouse, but concentrate on being a saint yourself. When you look in the mirror and realize your own issues, how dare we point the finger at the other person? And forgiveness is huge. We, in other talks that we give, especially based on our book, Intimate Graces, we talk about forgiveness. You have to let go.
There we go.
And you have to stop making issues out of the really small things. Stop. Look at yourself, pray, change yourself, pray for your spouse.
I would also add to pray as a couple and pray out loud as a couple so that your spouse can hear the concerns that are on your heart and the concerns that you have for her or him. And as you pray as a couple, you draw yourselves closer to God, but you also draw closer to one another. And I think as we look back on our issues, we kept score a lot. And as we came back to the church slowly and started to pray together and pray as a couple, we really started to understand that who we are individually, and that in a way we have not in a way, but we have certain personalities, we have certain things that we're good at, certain things we're not good at, and just certain traits that aren't going to change. I love what Dr. Ray said sometime early in his speech, when his wife never met a door that she didn't leave open. Because that's Teresa, but I've got the same kind of idiosyncrasies on other things, and it used to drive me crazy, But I learned, as Teresa said, not to sweat the small stuff. But when you pray together, you can hear the other person trying to, pleading to God to help make themselves a better person, and then you realize that you're in this together. And as you pray as a couple, I think those things will naturally just start to fade away, and you realize that it's no point in sweating the small stuff.
Nice.
That's right. Don't sweat the petty stuff and don't pet the sweaty stuff. Psychology has done a number on you folks.
I'm in physical pain.
Talk to my bodyguard. Psychology has done a number on you folks. How to. How do I quit nagging my spouse? How do I quit keeping score? How do I quit being so critical? How do I quit being so peevish? It's not a matter of how to. Stop it. Quit it.
That's my
Christians know that the will is at the center of everything, not how to, even though I've made $1 million on all my how-to books.
I don't know if you remember, when I introduced him, I said it would kill a mortal to be Dr. Ray. It would. It would kill a mortal. Padre, we got one for you, brother. And actually, brother, this came from a lot of different people. What is there a process? Is there a recommended way? How do we get Acts 29 to our parish or our diocese?
So the short answer to that is the bishop has to invite us to come to the diocese. So we don't solicit anybody. Our strategy is we go where the bishop invites us first to come, going back to what we were talking about earlier with the priests, to do a retreat for all the clergy in the diocese. Because the key to parish transformation is the transformation and the renewal of priests. So we do like a 3-day retreat for priests, where what we did the other day, in like an hour, we take all day to do for priests. We kind of just preach the gospel to them. Most priests, so the danger of being a priest is that you get used to being professionally religious. And the truly magnificent no longer overwhelms you often. So we just soak the brothers in the gospel, kind of like in an all-day thing. And then in the evening, we lead them through a kind of a recommitment of their priesthood. So the evil one comes after all of us in different ways. He comes after priests in a particular way, usually along the lines of, you no longer now have any authority to speak about anything because you've sinned since you were ordained, which of course is going to happen. But the enemy just goes after priests that way. So Simon Peter in John 21 goes fishing. Peter hasn't fished in 3 years, so far as we know. Why is Peter fishing?
That's what he knows.
I think Peter's fishing because he thinks, I got to go back to my old life now based on what I've just done.
Oh, wow.
And it's at that time when Jesus finally has what must have been a dreaded conversation for Peter and asks him that question, do you love me? Which seems like a setup to get yelled at. Because if the answer is yes, then where were you, and how did you deny me, and how did you let me die like that? But of course, that's not what Jesus answers him after Peter says yes. He says, then feed my sheep. So we soak the guys in that, and then we offer prayer ministry for the priests. So I'm one of 5 people on the team. The other 4 are all lay people. They pray over the priests if they want to get prayed with. The first time we did this, they prayed over guys for 3.5 hours. And then after that, we kind of share some things with them. And then the bishop invites us to come back and to partner with 5, 6, 7 pastors in his diocese who we would kind of mutually discern our generals, because we want to establish beachheads in dioceses to take back territory as opposed to just offer a program. We want God's world back.
Praise God. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're in a diocese, I mean, you can certainly tell the bishop about us, and they could contact us. We've heard we're booked through 2021, which is a great thing, I guess. But that's, I guess, what you can do as members of the diocese or whatnot.
Thank you, brother. I've got 2 questions that are going to be for everybody. Okay, but before that, sorry, can you hand it to Dr. Ray and really just pray, John, pray.
I was starting to twitch not having the mic for close to a minute.
Yeah, we're worried about your answers.
Take care of him.
This was specifically directed to you, Doc. My spouse and I have a conflict about financially supporting our son who is living with his girlfriend outside of marriage. They are both good, practicing, modern-day Catholics who are not completely formed. I have to go.
I want to know which one has the problem, the wife or the guy. I'm afraid to contradict the wife.
I'm going to guess. No, I'm not, because
We've had to do this with our sons. I have my children in their 20s now, a couple in their 30s. We've had to decide when we're going to support them. And as soon as they start being immoral and irresponsible, it's done. You will get not another nickel from me, even if you're on the street. It's not going to happen. Now, the problem is my wife and I are on the same page. When you got a situation like that, and here's what typically happens. One of the parents feels more guilty than the other.
yeah.
We didn't do a good job raising him. That's why he's this way. I can't pull out the rug from him now because he'll crash and burn. I couldn't live with myself if he crashed and burned. And you know what? Maybe he won't talk to me anymore either. I call it the blackmail. I can't convince these spouses to agree. Here's what typically happens. It's not that they completely disagree, it's that one has a longer tolerance level. So 4 years down the road, the other spouse finally said, I've had enough. That's enough. Okay, that's typically the way it goes. In a marriage, here's a problem. People have veto power. In other words, when my wife wanted to homeschool initially and I was working in the schools, I said no. Okay, I had veto power, so she didn't homeschool. So the problem with the veto power in something like that is if we say, hey, come on, you're giving this kid $300 a month to pay his rent. He's living with his girlfriend, for heaven's sake. Well, the other spouse has the veto power, and you got to be careful that you don't take this all the way to a marriage. Yeah.
Nice. Can we send it down to Al?
Not really.
I'll give you a
I've got
nickel.
it now.
I'll give you a nickel if you send it down to David, a nickel. Oh, sorry. Trust me, what I just did was funny. I want that on the record, all right? So, and we'll need a crisp answer on this one because I want to get everybody through. As the family is the domestic church, what is the one thing a family should do to build domestic church?
The one thing the parents should do is to be explicit about living out their own Christian commitment and their love for one another, rooted in the teaching of the church. I know people have all kinds of little things they do, rosary or this, that, or the other thing, but none of those kind of things can compare with being aware that you are explicitly modeling what the faith is about to those kids. And the parents have to be doing that together.
Nice, thank you. Sally? Sally, no?
We've said it lots of different ways by different people, but make sure your kids see how much you love each other. Hold hands, show affection. Don't be afraid to model the fact that you're the most important person in the other person's life next to Jesus.
Thanks.
I was talking with one of our pilgrims about the saying out, maybe you've probably seen it on church, maybe signs outside of church or maybe on a billboard. N-O Jesus, no Jesus, N-O peace. K-N-O-W Jesus, no Jesus, no peace. The thing that we stressed, I think, the most on Tuesday is that you have to have a personal relationship with Christ yourself, your spouse does, and then you come together as a domestic church. But God has to be at the center. So if you're doing all of these other things, not that we know, as Matt said, that the Eucharist is source and summit of our faith, but if we're just going through the motions and we're not having Christ at the center of it and understanding why, then the domestic church will remain broken. No Jesus, no peace. No Jesus, no peace.
Groovy. Nice.
I really appreciated what Matt was stressing yesterday about fundamentals. I think oftentimes in marriage and family, it'd be worth pulling back and recapturing certain fundamentals. I was talking with some friends the other day about organizational health and how important that is for success. The Ravens were an extremely healthy organization. Companies which thrive are extremely healthy. We spend all this time on organizational health. The single most important organization is the family. I would actually encourage couples to read a book called The Advantage, which is actually about companies, but it's very apropos to marriage. And in that book, Pat Lencioni, who's a really devout Catholic, talks about getting clear on your culture, which applies to marriage as well. And one of the ways you do that is you answer 6 crucial questions. Why do we exist? How do we behave? What do we do? How will we succeed? What is most important right now? And who must do what? When
Nice.
a couple can answer those questions and have clarity about them, I think that's foundational for building a domestic church.
Brother, before you hand it up, what's the name of the book?
The Advantage
Got
by
it.
a man named Patrick Lencioni, Lencioni.
Thanks.
I've noticed that the camera is not on me, it's still on Father John, so I'm going to yield my time to Matt.
Thank you. Ditto to all that. And I guess I would put it like this. What we try to do is, we don't compartmentalize our faith. So faith permeates everything. All the discussions, everything we do, you try to bring faith into it. So that's their perspective, right? We're trying to form our children's worldview. And so we want them to look at everything through the Catholic lens, the Christian lens, not just okay, we went to church and now we go live a different type of life. So we bring it into everything.
Nice. And if I may, my dad's here. Hi, Dad. His attitude's a problem. One thing I learned, so my mom and dad had 6 kids, and they took in, my mom went to be with the Lord a couple years ago from Alzheimer's, and we counted 38 kids they took into the house, right, during their marriage. I was 4 of them. It's awkward, and I don't want to talk about it. No, but truly, we counted 38, right? 38 kids, different races, different religions. Flint collapsed. And we endured a lot from pastors, from outside society. We had the audacity to not worship sports in a small town, which is a federal crime now. We prayed together as a family. We were not rich. We were not powerful. We were a voting bloc. That was nice in a small town. A drain commissioner loved us. But Mom and Dad couldn't have been more different. And I always laugh, my mom's great line was, when 2 people agree all the time on everything, you don't need one of them. And yeah, it's a true story. But what I watched them do over and over, and like to the point where I want to cry trying to explain this to you, they sacrificed. We didn't have a second house. We didn't have new cars. We didn't, and they did it because it was right. And the price for that was often pain. The world doesn't know how to reward virtue. And what I learned watching them was that the devil cannot create, right? He can only pervert or destroy. And as a result of that, he's always going to be powerless against sacrifice. And you may be familiar with an event called the crucifixion. That worked out really good for us because the devil is powerless in the face of sacrifice. It's astounding to think of. And so, foundationally, there is nothing, I think, you can teach, in my not at all humble opinion, although I'm humble. Wouldn't you say, Doc, the humblest guy really ever? Okay, don't answer. Just agree, don't discern it, don't pray about it. No, but truly, with every cell in my body, when your marriage is hurting, when your kids are hurting, when things are tough, there is nothing you can do to fight the devil more than sacrifice. And I think that's so foundational. And what better thing than to imitate the Eucharist that we receive. I'm a big fan of this. So guys, we're getting to the end here, and I have a final question, and we can start wherever, but if possible, I'd love for everybody to take a stab at this, okay? In 5 words or less, explain the Trinity. We're going to start with Thomas Aquinas. No. If you were to pick, if you have your own podcast, besides that, what's 1 or 2 podcasts that you would recommend as your faves? You know, saying to people, you should listen to this. And if not a podcast, if you're not that person, a show or book. How's that? So, Matt, you want to start, brother, or you want time to think?
No, it's not gonna. My answer's not gonna get any better.
Yeah.
I can talk about Dr. Ray, all of his books. Yeah, those would be the books.
We'll get repetitive down the line there.
So just to stall for 1 second, as we're doing the humble Olympics here,
Right.
I feel like I'm very humble as well.
I read your book, Humility and How It Made Me Great.
Yes.
That was fantastic. Man.
You know, And I don't want to brag, but I did memorize the Litany of Humility. So
Right.
that's
Right.
not to brag.
It's just
though.
science. Yeah.
I don't listen to podcasts. I can just there obviously have been a few books in my life that have changed my life. One of them is I was sort of starting my way back, and this might be a good one for the people who have questions or concerns about adult children who have left. The gentleman who gave it to me he was sitting here. Oh, he's over there now. He moved. God would have it. I moved next door to him, and he gave me the book Made for More by Curtis Martin, which is a very logical approach to kind of, hey, let's figure out, was there this guy Jesus? Did he exist? Let's walk through this. And at the end, it's a great testimony of the Catholic faith. But that's a great book and one of those sort of foundational books in my life.
Pretty much anything by Peter Kraft.
Me too. Me too.
I mentioned Pat Lencioni. He's got a podcast called At the Table with Pat Lencioni. It's on organizational health, but it's often very much related to marriage and family. It's really good.
Well, it's still the best-selling book of all time. Here's a novel idea. Read the Bible every day. Basic instructions before leaving Earth.
Nice.
See the word Bible as an acronym. Secondly, The Lives of the Saints, one of my favorite books, and I've talked about this on Al's show. It's about one of my favorite saints, St. Catherine of Siena, and you want to see someone who lived in a time that makes this look like a walk in Central Park? The book is Lay Siege to Heaven by Louis DeWall.
One
so
more
that's
time.
number 2, Lay Siege to Heaven. And it's her life story told from historical perspective, and that you walk through the streets of Siena with her, and as she's dealing with all this craziness in the church and in the world. And then last but not least, read the lives of the saints.
Yeah.
St. Teresa of Avila, St. John Vianney, Padre Pio, all of these folks didn't just happen to become saints. There's a lot of suffering involved, and they have great wisdom, and we have over 10,000 saints in the Catholic Church.
One of the most influential books that I read recently, I didn't read it recently, but it always sticks in my mind that I always recommend, is Archbishop Champu's book, Render Unto Caesar.
Oh, nice.
I think it's a great practical book on how to live your Catholic faith in the public square. And the reason I say I like this book so much is that as an engineer, I like to highlight and underline, and I almost always do that with the books that I start. But after a while, I quit highlighting and underlining because I was like just doing every page. I think it's that great.
Well, spiritually, on the side of spirituality, I am a great devotee of Carol Houselander. I don't know, she's not that well known, but she's worth getting to know.
Can you say it one more time?
Carol Houselander.
Okay.
She wrote during World War II. She was living in London during the Blitz, and her spirituality is just very profound. The other podcast I'd recommend is this thing called Talk from the Heart. No. Cresta in the Afternoon.
I've never respected you more.
I don't know where that came from. But no, really, someone this morning at breakfast said, I listened to your husband's podcast. I thought, oh, I hadn't thought of it as a podcast, but it is. And if I miss something during the day, I go back and listen from the archives. So it keeps me in the, I think it's a good way to stay in touch with the times, the church in the times, and how to respond. And I'm just a really big fan of him.
Those are a lot of very good suggestions there. I think I'll go back to something that was very influential to me. Is a little book by Thomas Merton called Life and Holiness. I don't hear people talk about it much, and I don't know why, because it's really an outstanding book. And it's easy to read, and it's short, and it's profound. Life and Holiness by Thomas Merton. And then this is a little bit off what maybe some people are thinking, but I thought G.K. Chesterton's St. Francis of Assisi there's something about that book that just mediates holiness to me. And I've read it I don't know how many times, But that's by G.K. Chesterton, Francis of Assisi.
Nice. Okay. I listen to an obscene amount of podcasts, but they're all history ones. I find for spiritual stuff, I've got to read it, right? So for me, Spiritual Combat is probably my top 10 all-time books for daily reflection and challenge. It's called The Spiritual Combat. And anything by Kraft. I can't, that's what I wrote down. I'm like, Dr. Peter Kraft, actually, this is dogma. He descended from heaven. And we don't know how long we get him, but fantastic. And then, oddly enough, Mere Christianity, one of the most read books. You can't read it enough. I find. I don't know what y'all think.
Yeah.
It's all that. All Lewis did was hit home runs. He did. He was Ted Williams, and great stuff. So let's give a big hand for these beautiful, amazing people. We're so blessed.